Hey you guys! I finally finished the Mistborn Trilogy. Does it live up to the hype? Yes. Is it perfect? No. Though most of those flaws are relegated to the second book, and I discuss them in this video here. Turning back to the grand finale, The Hero of Ages, I will give it a few spoiler-free thoughts before delving into spoilerdom. The Hero of Ages is a satisfying close to the Mistborn series. Sanderson's charming characters were allowed to be clever again and solve problems as the book progressed, but it never lowered the stakes. Sanderson is back in his element of explaining a hard magic system to progress a plot. He also delivers satisfying character development and payoffs from all the setups in the last book. In short, if you've been a fan so far, you'll like it. And if you were disappointed by the sequel, you will still like this. Spoilers review. You have been warned. World building.
I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
This relatively brief section deals with the physical world of the Final Empire. The Hero of Ages finally takes the reader outside of Luthadel and explores the Final Empire. Seeing the different geographies was a great way to understand its scale, beyond the notion from the first two books that it just was really big. Urto's canals were a bit hard for me to picture because all the cities I can think of with street canals are on the edges of great bodies of water. Since canals are a primary method of transport, I can imagine an opulent trading city digging out their streets for canals to expedite the process, though Sanderson never mentions if Urto's canals connect to the larger system. Other than that, I have no complaints. Since Sanderson really destroys his world in this book, and I do not have first-hand knowledge of apocalyptic events, so there is nothing I can compare this to, but he makes it feel real enough. I have, however, lived through two major predicted world endings, so I can relate to the average people who just chat about their impending doom with some skepticism. All in all, it was a great world while it lasted. Mythology or magic system? Sanderson provides so many explanations for all the unanswered questions raised in the prior two books, but I can't help but wonder...
Do you think he plans it all out? Or just makes it up as he goes along?
Obviously, Sanderson is known for planning hard magic systems, but as it approaches theology, things get a bit fuzzy. But I will delve into these theological questions next week. As for how the answers provided affected my overall enjoyment, I really liked it. His careful exposition at the beginning finally begins to reignite my appetite for all this mythos, and by the end, I devoured it whole hog. Characters. Unlike most reviewers who focus on the plot for their enjoyment, my enjoyment is based mostly on if I can understand the characters' desires, fears, level of intelligence. Then, given that, does what they do in the plot make sense? It doesn't matter if they are trying to get a date to the dance or save the world. If I don't buy it, it stinks. This was not a problem for this book, as every character makes the most in-character choice they can do at every turn of this novel. Then, our street-smart protagonist is once again displaying smarts. Yay! True, she doesn't always make the right choice, but given the large amount of misinformation she receives, she does a good job. Understanding just how far the gods have been toying with her during her overarching story explains so much about her powers and failings. As for her personal life, I laughed so hard when Ellen pulled out a book during their first dance. So cute! Then she became a god and up and died. Her death was probably the hardest for me to come to terms with because it was so abstract. Two formless beings who exist in space fought and killed each other. How? Why? Okay, sure, I'll just cry. Elend. His death by beheading was much easier to understand and quite revolting. This book returned to the first up-close and personal relationship with gore and violence. While he lived, Elend also displayed his much-praised intelligence and integrity, deciding not to attack Fadric City, and the discovery of Ska Allomancer's were strokes of genius. After his intellectual foibles of the last book, I was beginning to wonder if he was as smart as Vin claimed. But he proved true. To the end, he proved true. Spook. This guy. It's like he knew that everyone, including me, saw him as just a side character, and so he set out to prove us all wrong. He succeeded. I like that through him we finally got to see the side effects of over-allomancy use. Side effects that remain mysteriously absent from Vin to this day. Yet Spook's Blind Bandit act is an incredibly cool shtick, through which he grew into a charismatic leader of men with strong convictions. Spook also gets a genius moment that brought about the world's rebirth and was lucky enough to survive to see its new beginning. Sazed. Sazed's growth from pessimist to believer was great to see. From my own experience as a person of faith, there was always a time of great doubt, even for people who grew up within a faith tradition. Those that become strong believers are those that return after that slump. Sazed's story is like a more mature and apocalyptic Wide Awake, which takes the reader through his inner quest and ascension to divinity. Literally. Marsh. I never liked Marsh. I get the feeling that he, like Snape, is one of those antagonists that we are supposed to like because we feel sorry for him.
Really? After all this time? Always.
I don't. He is a whiny quitter who got in over his head and couldn't handle the consequences. I understand that he wants to be a good person, but being a good person and my liking a character are two different sets of criteria, especially because he killed Ellen. For that alone, I will never forgive him. The crew became supporting characters in their own series. I liked their conclusions, for those that survived this far, but the glimpse of brilliant teamwork hinted at in the first book was never rekindled again. Ruin. Since Ruin is a god, therefore a hybrid of a person and a force of nature, he is not the sort of layered and subtle character that I like to gush over in this section. But as an antagonist, he was supremely enjoyable. I wish he could have had more of a presence in the rest of the series because
the party don't start till I walk in.
And it don't stop until his demise. Plot. I appreciate the irony that Vin's early fears of betrayal were the result of herself or her earring, being her own worst enemy. I suppose that could be the moral of this story, played out in a multifaceted, continent-spanning plot. The setup was engaging. At every stage, something was happening, information was discovered, and decisions were made. Even if characters made the wrong decision, the energy with which they moved through their story energized me to keep up. As for the payoffs, I liked how each hero had their own small victory, which brought the team one step closer to success. Again, this book ends with Sazed deifying to fix everything, but since the reader understood his journey and struggled to get to this point, his character is worthy now to sweep in and save the day. Conclusion. This book made me laugh and cry for all the right reasons. Sanderson had left a lot to be wrapped up following the second book, and he does tie it all together with a satisfying end. As for the series as a whole, it was sort of all over the place. Unlike other series which are strung together by characters trying to reach a clear final objective, each book had its own final objective, so the stakes varied and the story's quality also varied. Sanderson really knows how to write a band of heroes setting forth to achieve a lofty goal, but he does not know how to write politics. I would recommend this series to anyone who, like me, is trying to get into modern fantasy, but is it the best fantasy series of all time?
Yeah, no. No. Sorry there.
With that cleared up, next week we'll delve into the fascinating terrorist theology and compare it to real-world religions. I think Sanderson did a masterful job at creating his theologies, so naturally I must scrutinize every last detail. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and/or subscribe to see more. Thank you, your patronage is greatly appreciated.